residence life. There's an imaginary person beside me, go with me. Her name is Chelsea Kelly. She is right now doing interviews for our resident assistant positions. I believe some of your student athletes are a part of that, so she couldn't be here today, but Chelsea still serves as our primary point of contact. She's responsible for all specialty assignments for housing, so you guys are good with giving feedback. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's hurtful, but I appreciate it all. But the great majority of that feedback is that Chelsea is super helpful in helping you to complete your process. And so she will continue to do that. She'll actually be sending out an email that's a little bit more assessment-driven in the coming weeks, just to kind of let you know how to go about completing that form again, just to kind of put it in writing. Hey, this is exactly what I need from you guys, and again, a little bit more about that process. Just coaches, you guys know that we always have students that kind of decide later on. Your process looks a little bit different from just our regular students that come in. Some of the students are international students, and some students are just trying to make a choice for AUM, not just based on the academic rigor or other things in the institution, but trying to plan on whether or not they're going to be student athletes here. So we adjust that timeline for those students differently because of those needs. So our new students that already know that they're going to be here, they're going to be Warhawk student athletes, our expectation is that they will go through the normal process just like every other student that have made the choice to be at AUM, and they are completing the application and doing the assignment process as normal. For those students that you are aware that you're in the recruitment process and they just haven't been able to complete that process yet, or they may be an international student that's still trying to get their paperwork in, or you know that you're going to have somebody, but you just don't know who that's going to be yet. We want those students to have the ability to live with their other teammates, to get a room assignment that is consistent with the other athletes, as well as if they have a scholarship, we want to make sure that they're not just getting whatever we have left over that may not be in line with what you have to offer. So because of that, we have these additional steps, but it helps us to be able to follow those steps to make sure we get you what you need. So what Chelsea will be sending out very likely at the beginning of next week is that exact same email that says, hey guys, it's time. This is a form to fill out that tells us the name and student number, if you know it, of your student, or even if you don't know it, you can say, I need 3 rooms in the courtyards, in a double occupancy space. And that way, even if we don't know the student name, we will put it into our system as men's basketball room 1, men's basketball room 2. So it's not just, imaginary. There's a space that is blocked out. And then what we work through over the course of a couple of months is you recruit that student. You have that student, you know the name, and then you have the student's student number. So we build all of that in, but at this process, we don't want it to get so far in that you don't have a space for a person, even if you don't know who they are. That is for our new students, and so that process will remain the same. But once you get that information, there'll be a deadline on it, because that deadline is going to be before we open up those spaces to any other student. We block off spaces for our student athletes. The problem is, everybody, or a lot of people, especially our spring sports, have a lot going on. So if you miss that deadline, it's not that housing doesn't care, it's that we put your deadline before we open it up to anybody else. So once we open it up to others, we no longer have those spaces available. So then we kind of go to, when you turn it in, what we have at that time. But you get the space before anybody else. Our specialty assignments, which includes some of our international programs and our learning communities and athletics, we block off your spaces first. So help us help you by whatever that deadline is. It's there for a reason. That's the best way for us to have plenty of time to block off those spaces before we open up to our other students. So again, that'll come out early next week, and we'll give you a couple of weeks to kind of figure out what your students need. That is for your new students. For your returning students, They've been here, they get first dibs. So they have the opportunity to go ahead and they had the application process open up a couple of weeks ago. It's been open for a while, but it's not closed to them. So our first action item is to get with your returning students, determine if they're going to be living on campus, and if they are, get them to complete the application right now. One of the changes is that our application process and our assignment process have separated. So they can complete an application before they determine where they're going to live, who they're going to live with. Right now, they just fill out the application. That's the only thing they do when they sign the contract. So with that process, though, our returning students don't even have to pay anything. It literally takes about 3 minutes at most. So just returning students that you know they plan to live on campus, if you would go ahead and get them to complete that process. And then our assignment process comes next. So another change that we have is that students who get an assignment have to be financially clear and registered for classes. So that's new this year. A lot of times we'll have students that plan to come to AUM, they never register for classes, they realize that some of the classes that they need to take are already full, and then they decide to go somewhere else. And it's really not necessary. Or we have students that absolutely don't intend to come to AUM, but they did back in February when they filled out their application. And so we are trying to hunt them down and figure out that for most of the summer, and then we realize when either they don't show up or we cancel their application that they're not coming. But they've never registered for classes, which shows us they intend to come back. So we have a April 1st priority deadline. That means that anybody that plans to choose their own room, we're asking you to apply by April 1st. Anybody that's been here before knows that our housing fills up. And in July, we are always on the wait list now. That's kind of where we are. That's why we intend to build, because we don't want to be like that forever. So we have kind of really tried to make it clear for our new and returning students that if you really want to make sure you have a room, especially if you want to make sure you get the room or room type of your choice, April 1st is the deadline where we think you have the best options available if you do it by that date. If you do it afterwards, we'll still take applications, we'll still make assignments, but there's never a guarantee. But as close as we can get to a guarantee is April 1st. If they make it happen by April 1st, then after April 1st, they'll get to go through our assignment process and choose their own room.
You said after April 1st?
After April 1st.
Okay.
So we haven't put out those exact dates yet to our students. We're going to kind of get a better idea of how many people we have to go through that process. But different people are going to get different time frames. So like our returning students have always had the opportunity to get their first choice. We don't want to take that away from them. But we don't want to give 1 week to our returners if there are 800 of them that have to go. We want to make sure we have that's the timeline that's appropriate for the amount of people we have trying to do applications. So the date is absolutely going to be after April 1st. We may push it back a couple of weeks. The other thing that happens is our students on campus, or all AUM students, aren't able to register until the end of March. So we also want to give them enough time to be able to register before we start the assignments process.
April 1st is the application deadline for priority assignment, and then assignment will happen April 1st until you open it until you open it.
Right.
For everybody.
It'll very likely be like the 15th when we started, because that way it gives students a full 2 weeks to apply to register for their classes. A second action item is the students right now need to meet with their advisor and get their schedules written out. Because once you get your schedule done, you have all the information you need to, on April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, just go in there and get your classes. Just register for classes. Athletes, I'm sure, get priority registration. So it's not hard at that point. It is hard at that point because I've met with the advising team, and it is hard at that point to get an appointment. But right now, they say that it's completely open. I'm going around talking to as many groups as I can, that right now you have to get an appointment with your advisor. So if you would share that information so they'll be prepared to go ahead and get their assignments. The only other thing is just maybe a suggestion. So a lot of times we have returning students that want to live with one another. And also there are students that maybe want to live with one another. You might have some opinions on that and they think it's a bad idea. So if you have practice or a team meeting or something like that in April, when we send out those dates to you in the coming weeks, it would be really great if maybe you can schedule a time in a computer lab or tell your student athletes to bring their laptops and just say, hey, you guys, we're going to sit down and we're going to kind of map it out with our returning students where everybody's going to live. That would also give you an opportunity to say, hey, at this point, you get it done, and I already know that I'm going to have a new student to live with one of you. You're very mature. I think you can help them kind of get acclimated. So we can kind of work together to make sure that the student athletes that are returning get into whatever new spaces you want those students to be in, but they have to assign themselves to those spaces. So if you have 4 softball students, student athletes that have always lived together, they want to live together again, if they know that date, then you can just say, you know what, guys, go ahead and get it done. I can pick on softball because they pretty much go ahead and get it done. But a lot of people do. But if you know that your students are like, oh yeah, I'll make it happen, and then you end up calling us like, hey, so whatever happened? We're like, we never heard from them. Then go ahead and set up that time. It certainly doesn't hurt to go ahead and kind of get them all together so they're in the spaces that you want them to be in, or you can give them some feedback on making good choices about it. Because some students, may say, oh yeah, I'll live with my teammate, but then they get into the system and they're sitting by one of their friends and then they decide to put themselves in a room, and we can't force them not to live with one of their friends that's not a student athlete. But if you know that's best for them as a student athlete, that's something that you can be a part of in that conversation. So strongly encourage that. I think the only other thing is that our new students, when they go through our assignment process, they also have a requirement that they are eligible for financial aid. We're asking that they have already completed the FAFSA form. So like our students that are international don't generally go through that process, and so that's not going to be a requirement for them. But a lot of our students that they're getting scholarships, they're not always aware that a part of getting a scholarship is their requirement to complete financial aid. And so they do that much later in the process and just have difficulty kind of getting everything taken care of in advance. So that's the other requirement that we're asking the students that are eligible to receive financial aid complete the FAFSA.
How does that implicate their application process? So if they know, hey, we're not going to be eligible, does that slow down that process? Who's making that, or do they continue through the process?
So the application process, they can complete their application without any challenges. They haven't done it.
Okay.
With the assignment process, the financial aid office is providing that information on who is eligible to complete the form and who has completed it. And if they haven't completed the form, then they won't be able to self-select.
They won't be able to
They will not be able to self-select.
How does financial aid know if someone qualifies or not? Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with qualifications or award, just completion.
So basically campus wants everybody to complete a FAFSA is what I'm hearing.
If you are eligible to receive it. If you say, hey, I'm not going to use aid, I don't want to receive it, you put that in writing, then, we probably can go ahead and let you move forward. But the makeup of our student, that is not generally.
I just want to make sure we're clear, because now what I'm hearing is our coaches need to make sure they communicate to prospects.
Right.
You need to apply for FAFSA.
Right.
In that process.
If you plan to live in housing.
Most of them plan to live in, or at least freshmen.
Freshmen have to.
Yeah. So in the recruiting process, I just want to make sure that that's clear, because they'll get stuck if that's not
Right.
communicated.
Absolutely.
And if we can help in that process.
And they should be doing that anyway. But
They should
yes,
be, but
we
not
need-
everybody.
We need to make sure that that box is absolutely checked.
And a lot of times they should be doing it, they don't do it, they realize it later on.
Right,
And they're
and they
getting
try to-
here
yeah,
in
for sure.
August and just filling it out and going through verification. At the same time that
Everything.
they might be starting their season, they're definitely gonna be in classes. Like a lot of people do this process in August.
Right.
And it's ridiculous, it
Yeah.
really is. And then they're realizing when they've already committed a lot of money to AUM that They may have made some bad choices on like where they're gonna stay and the meal plan they did and
Right.
things like that because they don't know early enough exact amount of aid they're gonna receive.
So I'm gonna go, actually another question. So if we've got a recruit here who knows without a doubt there's no reason for me to apply for FAFSA, is there, you're saying they can send a letter, but is there something formal that we can help facilitate with that? Because I just, coaches are gonna have conversations there and they're gonna know, but if we can help that in the front end, so there's not, hey, I can't finish my application, coach, I can't finish my, and the coach is saying, go do your application, that just creates, I'm trying, I can't, what's the holdup? Is,
It's an email, housing@abram.edu.
okay,
It's very simple to kind of opt out, but we don't want to publicize that there's an opt out because a lot of people will then just opt out and then realize, oh crap, I need aid. Because like it's more so an education issue, like where students may be receiving a scholarship from AUM to cover a lot of it. You still have to have applied for financial aid to receive that scholarship. So just the understanding that while I won't be using loans, but loans aren't the same thing.
so even if they're getting the out-of-state or, and I know it's probably, like literally any academic scholarship, they have to apply.
for financial aid.
Okay, yeah. I just know that's, we got a lot of people.
Right. And the truth is, I've been on an education path myself and kind of understanding, but we have so many students that arrive and have to leave pretty quickly because of the financial choices they made. And it's just because they don't know. So our goal is, because so many of our students that have that issue are students that are living on campus, are getting larger meal plans, are, students that may get a portion of a scholarship but not the whole scholarship. Our goal is to try to put some things in place so they can have some benchmarks. Students that are first generation don't have anybody that's telling them, hey, these are the things you do.
Right.
So our first generation students that are coming, that may need more funds than they're aware of and may not have the family support to provide them those additional funds, we're just going to put some things in place so they'll just be aware, hey, April 1st is our priority deadline. Not that you can't apply for that, but just knowing that helped us to get a lot more applications earlier, just by knowing that there's a priority deadline. Because our students think, I'll be there in June, I'll just do it in June. And by June,
It's too
we're out
late.
of spaces.
Yeah, great.
So we're just kind of putting some additional benchmarks in there for students to be successful.
When we communicate with our, I'm thinking about our green freshmen to be, and a lot of times the parents are just as green as the student athletes. Do we tell them, is it FAFSA.gov? Is that what they need to go to? Does our
There's a
admissions
website.
staff,
Yeah, it's on the admissions page. So what I'll do as a result of this conversation is I'll come up with some kind of checkbox sheet. But yeah, it's on our admission page. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to our admission page that has that FAFSA. I hate saying that.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound.
FAFSA's deadline is March 1st, isn't it?
So
Preferred.
you can do it after, but
Preferred.
theirs is just like ours.
Yeah,
Preferred
the,
deadline. Anyone
the
has
federal,
to-
the federal deadline, I think you can apply for
Apply
FAFSA even once your academic semester has started.
Which a lot of our students do.
Now, our institutional scholarships are March 1. So continuing merit and IBY are March 1. So in order to apply for those and qualify, you have to have submitted FAFSA, which is why we're all thinking March 1.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? I want to recap it.
I've got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Again, thinking about my green freshman to be, how much is the housing deposit that they're gonna have to pay? Do you know that off the top of
So
your
the
head?
application fee is $100. For new people, that has not changed. One thing that's changed, I'm glad you brought that up, is Warhawk Hall is now considered upper class housing. So new students that want to live in upper class housing can, but they're now responsible for a deposit. That's the other thing that we've kind of really seen, enough numbers to know that our freshmen that live in Warhawk Hall end up not being financially clear. You have to come out of pocket for Warhawk Hall. It's not an option. We send out emails. They have to fill out a form saying, I am aware that I will have to come out of pocket for this. And then they get here and they're like, I'm $1,000 short. You gotta move me. But we don't have any spaces at that point.
What's the deposit for this?
What's the
The
deposit?
deposit is $250.
So the deposit for Warhol Call for new students, since
New
it's considered
first-time
upperclassmen,
freshmen.
or upper, what do you call it, upper class?
Upper class house.
So
Since it's now considered an upper class residence hall, you have to have a deposit for a Warhol Call if you are a new student. That's $250. Is that does that go onto a bill? Is
That goes directly to their rental rate.
Okay.
So it's not like it's
So it's
deposit that
just
they keep on file. You pay for
$250
it
up front.
And this is true,
Plus
you have
the
to pay
100.
it. So
For the
that's a part of the application process. The assignment process is where you do the room assignment. So let's say that you go into the room assignment process. I was gonna say if none of you have done it, but I bet you haven't. If you haven't seen a student do it, you click on it and you say, okay, I want to live in the
Right.
Commons. You click on your room assignment and then it says, that's your room assignment, here
Right.
are your roommates.
Okay.
If you click on Warhol Call and say, I want this specific room, a page is gonna pop up and
Right.
show you that if you are opting into upper class housing, put in your information, your card information.
Okay.
So,
So they'll apply, everybody that's new will apply and pay the $100 application fee.
Right
That is
now.
non-refundable.
Correct.
And then, if you're a new student and you would like to go into Warhol Call,
You can opt into upper
you can
class
opt into
housing.
upper class housing,
Choose your exact room
immediately
assignment.
pay $250.
Mhm.
That $250
Is
is
refundable.
your deposit and it goes onto your bill.
It goes onto your bill as a rental rate.
Gotcha. But you guys keep the $250 if they don't show up.
No, we don't.
Oh,
The
Okay.
250 is completely refundable.
Okay.
But the truth is just that if you can't afford Warhol Call in April, you can't afford
Right.
it in August.
yeah, no, it makes
And
sense.
it's just like, don't set yourself up.
Yep.
You know, students are just like, but I want to live there. But then 3 months later,
Shoot, I wanna
they
live
have to go home. And we have to be a lot more intentional about retaining those
Yeah, for
students
sure.
that aren't making those good choices for themselves.
So then returning students don't have to pay that $250?
No, they don't,
Oh,
because it's upper class housing.
So, in returning, sophomores, juniors,
Good work, people.
as long as you return,
Mhm.
just new
it's only
students.
for you. Perfect.
Yes,
Just new
Okay.
students.
yes.
So I got new players that are coming in, they want to stay at Warhol, let's say they're freshmen.
Yes.
They're gonna fill out the FAFSA, they're gonna pay the $250, and then it's gonna ask them what room, I think.
They're gonna pay the
And they're not
100
gonna
first.
know what room, because on the coach on the other end, I'm telling them, hey, I've got it reserved for you. What
So
do they
we
put
tell
on
our
that?
students, choose a room.
Just make one
Always
up.
choose, everybody, when your student applies, always choose a room, new, return, whatever. The closer we can get them to understanding their process is just like everybody else, the better. Because sometimes they won't even fill out that application at all. Like, even when we talk to them, they refuse, they're like, my coach has it. No, my coach is taking care of everything. And so if we say, do everything, and then housing on the back end will make changes. So what we'll do is, we'll save a space for them, but you're telling us what area they want to live in. And they'll choose a totally different area and then say, no, I only live in this room. Well, if we've saved a space for you that's different, and you say, you know what, just go ahead and give them whatever they want, then we'll just open up that space. If they don't choose a room, and then they say, oh, no, I only want to live in this space, but we don't have that space, and if they haven't chosen it for themselves, then we can just say sorry. So we always, always, always want them to go through the entire process, and then on the back end, we'll make any changes.
So-
Again, my issue, I think, is a lot of those freshmen don't, let's say they want to go in Warhawk, they know they want to be with 2 other people. They may not know that room 305 is a 3-bedroom apartment. They're not going to have the knowledge base to, or I don't know what that screen looks like to even give them advice on what to put down.
And do you generally, I guess, generally have like softball in a certain area?
So it depends. Sometimes if that's a request, if you say, you know, I want all softball players, I think volleyball normally likes P40. So if you want all softball players, and I think a lot of times they want the Commons, that's fine. But a lot of times it seems like you guys are going more to this person wants this space, this person wants this space, and you know, I need 2 of these, and a 2-piece of this. So we really are kind of tailoring it to your needs. But
What I'm
again, with that
struggling-
space,
what
with
I'm-
that, what that screen looks like is that they click on Warhawk Hall,
Okay.
they click on how many people they want in the
Okay,
bedroom.
okay.
And then they click on what the exact room number is. If it's 402,
And
they
they
click
do-
on 402. And if they're a returner, then we want them to do all that,
Okay.
and that's gonna be their final room. If they're a new student, they click on 402, and then we just trade them
Okay.
out for that other space.
And I guess what Eric was probably asking, if he could have that information on the front end,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Like if
Could
you
we
already
put them in
had
that room?
that softball's gonna be in that area, and then he communicates to them, and they're punching in what you already need. I think that's
Right.
probably.
So the thing is, you have so many changes
Yeah.
Yeah.
that I
I
don't
think
think
that's
you want
difficult, yeah.
to get into that, because we'll have to put a specific attribute on the student to give
Right.
them access to specific rooms. And if that changes, you can't take that off of that student
Gotcha.
agency. So it's easier.
I just
for them
remember
to
getting phone calls and texts that say, Coach, I started to do it, but then it asked me for the room number. I didn't know what to put because I know you said you've got one, but they just need to go in. If I said, they have told me they want to be in a 3-bedroom in Warhawk,
Then say, just choose a 3-bedroom.
just choose a
And
3-bedroom.
then how's it gonna put you
It'll
in the
come-
right
It'll come in
room?
behind and, okay.
And the key to that is gonna be you guys reviewing that spreadsheet
Yes.
and making sure that if you want your 3, whatever, that they're all in the same room when Chelsea sends you the spreadsheet. Last year, we ran into issues
Because
with,
students are signing a contract, and if they say,
Right.
they can go in and they can tell you, I am going to live wherever you tell me to, but then they'll tell us, no, I'm gonna live with my brother. And we are beholden into them and what they're saying, and so we're asking that you guys communicate. And a lot of times, you say, you know what, that's where they wanna live, it's not the end of the world, and we'll open up that space. Or you'll say, hey, do you mind if I put this person in there instead? And we make that work. But we would rather let the students choose, and then once they choose, we're saying, hey, we're putting you in this space with your coaches, and they're like, oh, thanks, perfect. Those are really great, helpful questions, thank you.
Do y'all have deadlines already set up for the spreadsheet? Just kind of working deadline for staff in terms of looking every week.
Right, so when we send out that initial email that says, hey, if you would go ahead and give us the names of the new students that you plan on getting, and if you don't have the names, then just give us the amount of rooms you want, then that'll be step 1, and then we normally get an email from you that says, here are our current students, our current student athletes. Chelsea puts that spreadsheet together based on both of those things, and then that's when we start that weekly kind of send out that says, hey, this is what we have, you know, do we need to make changes, and kind of go from there. It's likely that we would start that process after April or right at April, because then we're sending you information you can actually use. Like, this is where your students actually put themselves. This is where we have went ahead and put your people in. So it'll likely be again like April through August, or early May through August.
You may have already covered this. So the incoming freshmen that I have, when do I tell them it's open and ready for them to apply for their housing? In April, is that what you're saying?
Today.
It's right now.
Okay, it's right
Today,
now.
the application opened for new students last Monday.
Okay,
Wait, today, last Monday.
okay.
We still have plenty of space at this point, so they're not behind anyway. The truth is, students that do it in February get exactly what they want. That's the truth. If you do it in February, you get what you want. It's the students that are end of March, you know, 1st of April, May, June, July, we are doing our best. So student athletes that know, we just have no reason to think that they won't just go ahead and do the normal process, especially our returners. I'm always shocked that in July, we're still talking about returning students, because they have to do nothing. They have to pay nothing. They just fill out the form.
so truly, the first spreadsheet that we get, everybody should be green that's returning.
Yes. Because there's nothing that I mean, literally it takes 3 minutes, because they're only doing half the process. All of their information is brought in from Banner automatically. So they're clicking a couple of buttons and putting in their own name. We put in the date for them. I mean, it's so easy. But, I mean, they're students and they forget, so I get that. We just need your support. We've sent them a ton of emails ourselves. So we certainly need your help in just reminding them, just do the application. And if it will be helpful for you guys to get some information sooner that just tells you who has done the application, that's not a challenge as well. We can get that information
Just had a quick question about the bill for housing.
Do you mind introducing yourself,
Ryan, the cross-country coach.
please? No, yes.
Yes. My look changes all the time. I may have had a beard. I may have had a beard last
You're in a beard.
Yeah.
The internet charge.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, $20.
Yeah, and it's for some kids, because we do a lot of housing scholarships.
Mhm.
And so I never knew about it. And then I finally had one parent call and was like, what's this $20? For a domestic kid, $20,
Mhm.
but for our internationals. So why is it that, say for Commons, its first semester is $3,085, and that internet charge isn't included in the $3,085?
The truth is, anytime we make adjustments to our rental rates, we have to take that to the Board of Trustees. And we have not changed our rental rate in the past couple of years to try to help students, just kind of keeping the overall cost down. When we do make changes to our rental rate again, we're going to absorb that cost.
Gotcha.
But we don't want to make a change just to absorb the $20.
Gotcha.
So it's really just trying to keep the cost low for students. As we've kind of introduced some other fees, and so we've kind of pulled back on making those adjustments. So that's the only thing that we would be doing. When we do make a change, we're gonna, we normally try to stay with the apartments. They normally do about a 2% increase, so we'll likely do like a 2% increase and then add in that $20 change.
Will there be an
So
increase
is
this
the
year?
Commons the only place where that's not absorbed? Or is
No, it's.
everybody has an additional
Yeah.
$20 charge? So what I hear is, we couldn't put the additional $20 charge onto the housing fee because then we would have had to go to BOT.
Correct.
Get it? So you guys will eventually absorb that. So then my question is that not then something, since it's a part of a housing fee, we
We haven't been able to take care of it because it's not housing, it's internet. So that's why the question was asked, can it be absorbed or when would it be absorbed?
So I seriously doubt we'll make another change. We're still trying to keep those prices low. So it would be next year before the year after be
2020, 2021.
when we'll be making those changes.
So for next year, everything's in the same.
Unofficially.
Is that something that could go under additional, could we put $20 under additional fee?
I mean, I'll have to do an interval. It's just, it sits out there as not room and board. It's
a separate charge.
It's just floating.
So it's under the housing detail code. I mean, if you wanna, it's not rental rate, but it is housing fee.
Well, I'll just have to look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing is, you guys need to understand, if that were to come back and that's permissible to pay for, is that we don't have the additional $20 per each one of your equivalencies to take care of that. So that you're gonna have to rob Peter to pay Paul for it. See what I'm saying? Now, when it's absorbed, the budgets will go up to accommodate the $20 increase
40 per year.
for the year. Really? It's 20 per semester?
Yep.
No, it's, oh, yes, I'm sorry, it is, other than the summer, we don't charge it in the summer.
Okay.
But it's 20 for the fall, 20 for
Okay.
spring.
Okay. So we'll do an interp on that and see what we can find out. Okay. What else, peeps?
Questions, comments, concerns?
So basically, just to recap, new, or returning students, returning housing residents
Mhm.
can go ahead and resubmit their application.
At this point, everybody
At this point, everybody can apply.
can apply.
So everybody needs to apply. Everybody needs to start applying for housing. All they need is name, S number.
They just need to go into my AUM. We supply the name and S number. If they go into my AUM and they click on housing, they just need to sign the contract.
Okay, okay, all right. So that's step one, okay, right now.
So
No
yeah, if
payment
they're a
for-
new person, they need to have been, even if they have their name and their S number, they have to be admitted.
Right.
And so that's the big difference, and I think we've probably all end up having conversations about that, like the student knows their S number, but then when we look a little bit closer, we realize, oh, oh, they still need a final transcript, and, oh,
Right.
you know, well, they hadn't gotten their visa yet, or, you know, whatever is needed to do those final steps. I would say that, I drill into my staff pretty good that we are all a team. And so if a student is calling with a concern that says, well, I told my coach and my coach didn't, then we say, well, we're all trying to help you. We would love if we get the same reciprocated that we are all really working to help the students. And it's not a good look on AUM, so it's not a good look on any of us if we're saying, well, housing's a bad guy, well, housing's not doing what we want. But encouraging students to know we're all really working, you know, if anybody dropped the ball, then we apologize, let's get you to the right person. Because, you know, sometimes it's easy to find information back in the email, and sometimes it's a phone call. I would encourage, it's easy for me because I sit in front of a desk most of the day. I know that's not your case, but when we're talking about student assignments and changes they made, 100% of the time, we need it in writing. If you come in and you talk to Chelsea, she's always glad to hear from you. But when we're talking about making those changes, if we make a change and the student's like, why'd you do this? And we're trying to figure out, hey, why did we do this? I think he called, I'm not, you know,
Right.
we never want to depend on our memory when we're talking about a student that is contractually obligated to an amount of money. We want to put that in writing. And then it protects you, it protects us, and this is the timeline. We ask the same thing of students. If you're wanting to make a change, it's got to be in writing. So if you would, please just, Chelsea always loves a visit, but I'm really going to harp on her this year that that visit is followed up by something in writing, and that is the only way we're going to be able to make that change. We get audited, and we have to be able to prove that we're doing things in the correct way.
And all those changes need to go to housing at AUM.
Housing that, well, this is the thing, this is the other thing, really good point. So you guys have a person that is designated just to support you. We're gonna pay somebody every single year to support you. The students have a team of people. So if you have a challenge, Chelsea is your person. Even if she delegates and says, Ms. Hampton, I need you to do this for the coaches, I'll do it. She is in charge of that process. So that we have continuity. When it comes to students email housing@aum.edu. Chelsea doesn't do student assignments directly. I would prefer that you didn't send students to me directly. It takes them a little bit longer to get the right information. Because a lot of times they'll have a simple question that the 3 people that work on emails all day can pop right back to them. But if you send them to me, you know, I'm in here talking to you guys and they're emailing or they're calling me and they're like, I've called her 3 times, I'm not getting any help. Please don't call me because I'm not in there. You know, I'll be in Auburn for the next 2 days and your students will be calling and never getting me and frustrated. But if they call the housing main number and say, can I complete my application? They say yes, their question is answered. So the main number and the main email for students, because depending on their issue, we send them to the right people through that. But you guys, you have a person that is directly supporting you in what you're doing, and that's just.
What's the main number?
The main number is 3296.
Housing@aum.edu.
Yep, I got
Yes. And we all will get on there at different times, but there's always somebody that's directly responsible for responding to those. So our goal is to have a really good response time on that, because students have the expectation. They send something to you, they want to hear right back. And depending on the person they send it to, it's just hard to get that quick response. But housing@aum.edu, if I see something in there that's been in there for 12 hours, I'm looking at it and responding. So many good questions. Any other questions?
Real quick, before you end up, just, you mentioned name and face. I know we got at least 2 new coaches in the room. If, you know, if everybody would just introduce themselves to Aisha again, so she name and face real quick. Yeah, you're going
Hey,
to
I'm Sean Page, I'm the women's basketball coach. Sorry to be late.
No worries, I wrote that down.
Thank you, I appreciate it. You really were a big help to me. I had a kid come in mid-year, and you guys are really good with hearing so that, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Certainly try. And everybody gets it wrong sometimes, so let me put a blanket sorry over whatever, you know, last year. And maybe a little bit of sorry over this year. We have a new, oh, that's what I should have brought with me. We have a new associate director. Her name is Marnita Smith. She is not new to AUM, so you may know her, but she works in learning community, so you may not. But either way, Marnika is fabulous, and we'll make sure that she kind of makes her rounds as well. But she'll be offering some support also, where Lance used to provide some support. But mostly Chelsea. She is fabulous. We love Chelsea. Sorry, Sean.
Go ahead, Ron.
I know you're best.
Robert Penny, assistant in basketball.
Mike Chang, men's basketball.
Alphonsus Yang, women's soccer.
Jared Van Rose, tennis.
Coach Newell, women's softball.
Ryan Thompson, cross country.
Flat volleyball.
Olivia Stan's assistant. Scotty Wilkes, assistant softball.
Wonderful. So yeah, I don't think there was a face that I didn't know. Well, a face minus a beard, but most, most faces I think I've known and interacted with. And of course, I appreciate what you guys do. We certainly try to support and promote the athletic program as much as possible. There are always things that we can do to improve. The processes that we have in place, we only have in place to support. If there's any portion of our process that you're like, it's just kind of not working for us, if we take it completely out, let's work on us. Or if we revamp it, it's the same amount of effort put into something that we want to work for you. So if you know of something now, feel free to share. If you think of something later, feel free to shoot, Chelsea or I an email and just let us know, hey, this is kind of labor intensive for us. Is there a way for us to do it better? And we're happy to do it. No other questions?
No, I just want to say, I think the key to all of this, anytime we've run into an issue with not having a room for even a PSA that we don't know the name of, just holding a slot, is because we don't do a good job of reviewing the spreadsheet that's set. And it's set on a weekly basis. So I have faith that all the people that are now in this room will do that. But check that spreadsheet. Don't just say, got another one from housing. Let me check the names, check the rooms, check to see if they filled out the application process. Because as long as you check that, call your kids and say, why isn't your application in? Or whatever it may be, communicate. We don't have issues. When we get into issues is when we don't truly just take 10 minutes to look over that spreadsheet and send Chelsea with a, hey, notice this error, or I do have an update, I've got a kid's name, S number, they've been admitted. So that spreadsheet is key. They do not have to do that spreadsheet. They can easily say to us, you know what, you guys can be like the rest of campus and we're not gonna help you out, first come, first serve, whatever it may be. So they take a lot of time to designate a person to us to try and help facilitate that process. So I know I appreciate that, because it could be a disaster if that was not the case. So thank you guys for doing that. We will do a better job this year than we did last year, because I know some of the issues that came up were because, well, you've had that on a spreadsheet for 6 months now and you never told us. And that's not a valid excuse for us anymore.
Right. And we'll definitely do a better job of communicating too. I know that, Chelsea is very kind and she's like, I know what he said and I'll write it down somewhere. Or I remember talking to her, and so we're gonna do a better job of, if we say you gotta put it in writing,
Yeah.
you gotta put it in writing. Because we run into students kind of calling us to the carpet like, you've charged me for this room in the Commons and I can't afford it. My scholarship only covers this. And then we're like, why did we do that? And it could have been a very valid conversation that we've had and just forgot.
Right.
So we're going to do a better job of really trying to make sure we keep a good record of the changes that we're making. And I was just going to point out, because you made a good comment, that a lot of times you look at the spreadsheet when you know you're looking for changes. I said these changes to Chelsea. I'm going to look on here. Yes, she made them. Great. If you don't make any changes, then you're like, why would I have to look at it? But the students always have the ability to make changes. And so a lot of times those are the changes that we're putting on there, that they just randomly choose to live somewhere else. And they move themselves. And, we're not going to stop them from doing that, but we are going to make you aware. So she looks at every single one of those students and looks up their information and updates it based on changes they've made. So that's just another reason to look at every single week, because they are constantly doing stuff. And we just want to make sure that you guys are aware. Again, if any questions come up in the interim, feel free to let us know. Yes, sir.
Do you know when the moving date is for the regular students? Because we held that last year.
Bomb.com. So that is the final change. Housing moving is now on Thursday and Friday instead of Friday and Saturday. Again, they're trying to get some benchmarks for students to make good choices. They move in on Saturday, and they have a lot of stuff to do with different areas of campus to get themselves ready for classes to start. But then they move in on the day that nobody is open, and on Monday when they should be in class, they're in financial aid, or they're trying to turn last minute stuff into the admissions office about their vaccinations or whatever. So we want to give them those days to kind of handle their business after they get everything moved in. So that date is the 15th and 16th of August. Our 15th for returning students and 16th for our new students. And as always, Andre always sends me a list of your dates if you're outside of those
Preseasons,
two.
yeah, the preseason dates.
And we all will be prepared for you
Can I
guys.
sneak one more in?
Sure.
What advice would you give to a player that's contemplating, let's say they're in the residence halls now, and they're contemplating moving off campus, but they're like, I don't know. What advice would you give there?
That's a good one. So it depends on reason, like.
I mean, should they apply
Oh,
and
absolutely.
just be like, and then come to you or come to us and say, you know what, I have found a place, I'm not going to do it, and then they need to communicate with that. And then there's a penalty for that.
Great question. So, and another change. So, 150% apply. No question. They need to apply. They are not locked into anything until June 1st. So that's an update. It used to be July 1st. So June 1st is our cancellation date. That is the first day that those students will be responsible for any penalty, which is $150 if they change their mind. So they can pick a room and everything and still be trying to make a determination.
You said 150?
It's 150 beginning June 1st, on June 1st. If they cancel after that date, then they will be responsible. But go ahead and get your room locked in, with your other teammates. And then if that changes, then you can say, well, if it's a returning student, we'll just take the space back. But if they come to you and say, hey, I want to move out, they don't have to say anything to us. They click a button and it's canceled, and that's it. It's super simple. That takes less than 3 minutes. But if you want to try to work with that space, then you have to let us know before that, because it's open to students, right? So if they cancel, the room pops open, somebody else jumps in.
Yeah.
So we would have to facilitate that prior to the student canceling, because our rule of thumb, where we feel like we are in compliance, is when we're not negatively impacting non-student athletes. In that process, if we have to call and say, hey, so we're going to move you,
Right.
and especially if it's one of the only spaces in the area somebody wants, it just is the negative that another student is feeling just because we weren't able to manage that process.
So I just want to be clear, because we ran into that last year too. For a student who's applied and then going to cancel or notify you that they're not going to be a part of housing, if our coach says, okay, but I want to put kid A and where kid B just left, before you hit cancel on the
For
computer,
the student A.
touch base so that you know we're swapping it.
Absolutely.
Because as soon as it's canceled, it's automated, and a kid is just going to pop in.
Right.
But if we inform you,
Then
you
we
can help us
just
facilitate
upload
that.
it.
Perfect.
And inform us in writing. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you inform us in writing and we know, hey, kid A is about to leave, then we can go ahead and we might pull that student either out or just hold it, just so that when they do, or we really could just click a button and take that room offline.
Okay.
But the other thing is too, that there's somebody's job that twice a week is going through at a certain point and seeing who can we put in a room. Because students that get left on the
Right.
waiting list are students that we lose.
Right.
So somebody's absolute job, and I have to send this information to the provost and chancellor on a weekly basis, and the basis about June or July. So we're trying to get students in bed. So that's a quick turnaround time. So those conversations that you have with them and include us in, we'll definitely work on. The other thing is that, we get kind of far into the academic year or the summer, and you still have spaces being held, and you may or not be quite sure about, what student is in there. But there just has to be a really, really strong awareness that there's a lot of scrutiny on what we're doing. It is not at all that we don't want your student to be in this space, but we're sending lists, and they're saying these rooms aren't being used. and why. And if we have a student that says, I'm leaving AUM if I don't get a room, or I'm not gonna come, and we have a student that we don't even know their name yet, we're being told, give that to the person right there screaming at us. And there's just nothing we can do about that. So just know our intent is to really support as long as we can, but I have a mortgage. So when we have to make that decision, we have that last and final deadline. It's not because we don't want to provide it, but we just have to yield to the will of the overall goal. All right, I've taken quite a bit of your time.
Thank you.
The only thing I was gonna say is what I'm gonna do, guys, is I'm gonna just take the notes that I've taken, that have just the different action items, reminders, deadlines, probably shoot that to you. See if I'm missing anything that you think that's gonna be pertinent to this group, and then I will shoot that out to you guys, because I know it is just a whole bunch of stuff. Who remembered it all?
I wrote it down.
Mark.
Oh, being smart aleck, sorry.
So it's like.
Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you
Very
much.
helpful.
All right, no problem.
Ah, you guys are good.
Thank you. All right,
Well,
so I'm trying to make this.
you got 2 minutes, Andrea.
I'm gonna take at least 15. Sorry. The beauty is that there's nothing PowerPoint, so I'll board you.
What time is she done? 11. I'm waiting.
Real quick update. I know you guys were aware that Dr. A was in the hospital, had surgery. He's at a recovery place called Compass on Normal Laney Road. If you want to visit him, I'll shoot out an email and give you his information. He'll be there for a little bit. Not sure what the estimated time of moving from there back to home is, but spoke to him this morning. He's in good spirits, just ready to get out of there.
We'll probably do a card, and I'm gonna go grab a Panera gift card since he likes Panera. So just swing by the office probably tomorrow and sign it. If you haven't filled this out, sign it. Okay.
Academic reminders for you guys. Aisha already hit on it. Just make sure your students are going ahead and meeting with their advisors. I know we had some discussion with, I think, our complex sports about practice times. And I think maybe I got one or two. If you guys can send me what your training time is so I can get that out to our campus advisors, I'd greatly appreciate that. If you can do it now while you're here on your phone, that's great too. Just so I can share that information and it helps them in that planning. I know a lot of advisors are using advisor track, some still don't. Make sure your students are reaching out early. There is a push on campus that everyone is registering, or not registering, getting with their advisors early, right? So we've always pushed, go meet with your advisor early on. Well, they're doing that to the whole campus, and what is gonna probably happen is if they're doing that to the whole campus, those advising appointments will go quick, okay? I would encourage if your student says, hey, I can't see where my advisor is available on advisor track, email them directly, right? Very nice and simple. Hey, I see on advisor track, you don't look like you have time available. Do you have time to meet and provide some time for that? So we make sure that at least they get their PIN number early and they're ready to go, and they're not caught up in the shuffle of campus and are able to utilize priority registration for that piece. Okay. Some general compliance reminders, just make sure if you got anybody on the transfer portal, your watch list, that you're giving me a copy of that so that I can update my watch list. I know you guys are recruiting, but if someone is no longer considered a prospect for you, go ahead and take them off your institutional request list. And then if you have someone who you are recruiting, go ahead and put them on your institutional request list, okay? So it just puts them in the line, so they need to be evaluated, whether they're international, domestic, transfer, that they're on there early, and then that way, especially for our fall sports, that they can be reviewed and in line in a timely fashion. D2 University, I know in our January meeting, our staff meeting, because we didn't have one in January, I mentioned
that I'd like for you guys to go ahead and work through 2 assignments: eligibility 2-year college transfer and eligibility 4-year college transfer. My goal was actually this month to talk through some transfers and invite some folks from campus, registrar, international, and then even admissions, just to talk through some processes because they've changed. What I will try to do is probably do that in April, since next month we're inviting Leslie Meadows to talk through cancer clinic stuff. What I want to do in terms of your assignment, I want to add one additional thing, because Leslie will be coming in March when we meet, is the NCAA Coach Assist for Sexual Violence Prevention online course. All right, so if you go in there and you go to your catalog, you'll see that course in there. Just go ahead and enroll in it and go ahead and complete that. I'd like that done before we meet March. I think it's the 3rd week in March we'll meet, because we're at regional seminar the 2nd week. I'll send an email out because we're talking through this and provide the slide, but I do want to add that piece so that way we cover that material before we meet with Leslie for that piece. Okay. What I did want to go through, I know at staff meeting went through briefly the adopted legislation, but there's kind of the untalked about, unseen, unless you're diving into the official notice of what has been adopted that was either controversial, or was an intern just put into legislation. So I wanted to go over a couple of them that I thought were worth noting in terms of what you guys do on a daily basis. So that way you were just generally aware of some things as you guys can see and involved in a couple of things. The first thing that I have listed here were 2 interns. One being with our promotional activities. Essentially, this dealt with an exception that was added to that. So exception to that, the promotional activity condition applies to activities and organizations by an institution athletic department and conference in which the student athlete participates independent of their status. And so, and it has to do with using their name and likeness in there, right? So again, we've got our form that works through that process. They've just added this piece into that in terms of utilizing their picture. One thing that we do on the front end when we have our beginning of the year meetings is ask for that name and likeness, so that way we have it on file. It's nothing really new, but it's just a question that's getting asked in terms of interns that come through to be added in there, okay? Another piece, and I think I may have sent something out early in the year with this one, dealt with official visits, right? So when your 2-year and 4 years are coming to campus, before the legislation just simply said, hey, we need a transcript. Now they're asking for a current transcript, right? So that will reflect whatever term just completed, plus showing maybe what they're enrolled, but definitely what's completed. So it's as current as possible in terms of that. So keep that in mind when you do have any transfer prospects coming to campus. Okay.
So bringing the kid in this semester, they need a current transcript.
If you're bringing them in on an official visit, and I would say unofficial because we asked for the, that same material.
They need fall or the spring.
So if you were to bring in a prospect to campus after your eval period, when you get in contact, that when that student come in, if they came in the spring, they'll need to show fall grades completed. Okay. Same thing, if, next fall you bring someone in for a recruiting visit, they'll need to show, what were we in, 18, 19? They'll need to show a full transcript of 18, 19, not just, a half or what I had requested when I was, maybe what they had when they were being recruited earlier in the process. Okay. So just make sure it's a current transcript, but you can use your eyes, and then we'll look at it too when we go through our process. Another piece that came out was eligibility that dealt with the experimental learning requirement. So legislation simply said before that if a student athlete was in their last semester, they could be enrolled in less than full-time if they were going to graduate in May. Now what they've added to the legislation is that if they have an internship, right, the semester before, just the internship, they can be enrolled in less than full-time and then still be able to complete that internship, right, without graduating before then. So I'll give you an example.